Hi guys, Carl Hansen here, CEO and founder of Weavy. Today's topic is going to be about in-app collaboration, using our SDK and API to do so. And to illustrate that, we created a demo app using Telerik's UI library for Blazor, combined with our SDK and API and all the features we have. Let's start though to talk about what Weavy is and the concepts and the fundamentals. We understand that when we're starting embedding Weavy into app. Okay, so Weavy is an in-app collaboration SDK and API. And the reason we exist is that we think that your app is where work actually happens. We want to bring the collaboration experience into your app so your users can do more of the work without leaving your app, okay? And we do that through a couple of key features, starting with in-app messaging, so instant messaging. You have all the things you expect, like group chats, one-to-one chats. You have things you can listen to, like from a programmatic point of view, for typing indicators, presence indicators, read and deliver receipts and all that stuff. And you can attach files. We have a really rich file preview throughout all our features. I'm going to show you that later. The next feature we have, activity feeds, aka like the LinkedIn or Facebook feed, right? And again, like everything you expect, posts, comments, likes, you have polls, you have emoticons, you can attach files, there's everything you can expect, right, from a feed functionality. And the third feature we have is the file sharing component. Which literally means you can, within your app, create like a Dropbox copy. It's that powerful. You can share files, you can remote editing files, you have version handling, version control. You have, again, the file preview. You can do collaboration and comments. And we also do have integrations to Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, OneDrive, all in one place. The concept and the fundamentals of Weavy. We're going to talk about these three. User directories, spaces, and apps. We need to understand them so we know how things are kind of hooked together. User directories exist, simply because of multi-tenancy, right? So you probably have a key in your system lumping these users together and these users together and these users together. Weavy has the exact same thing, so you can lump users together so they can collaborate and communicate within their directories. A user only always associated with one directory and one directory only, but it still allows you for cross communication between directories. So we're going to tell you how that actually works. Another key component or fundamentals are spaces. So spaces, we say, usually is something you attach to a view or an object within your app. So let's say you're an ERP developer. So you have an invoice in your app. That's the object. So we want to attach our workspace in Weavy, right, to that object, the invoice. And the space can have one or more members. And this is where the cross communication comes in, because you can actually invite members from different directories. And since they're in the same space, they are allowed to communicate with each other until they're not, because you can add and remove all the users programmatically in real time. So that's how you can actually have a vendor A and vendor B, for some reason, collaborate around this, one invoice, for example. In one space also, you add one or more apps. And apps are our building blocks, like I mentioned before, the messaging, the feeds, and the file sharing. So these apps lives in a space that is attached to your object, right? The invoice has a space. And then what do we want to do about the invoice? Okay, we want to talk. So let's attach feeds. I want to be able to attach, even more files. Okay, we attach the file sharing piece. I want to do comments. Okay, we attach the comment app, so to speak, into the app, into the space. So you can add one or more apps, and they can be the same apps. So you can have several files apps. You can have several post apps for different reasons. Because let's say in your app, you have different, obviously, permission levels. Like, so when I look at this invoice, I have different permissions what I can do. And these apps you can embed into your app through two concepts within Weavy, the drop-in UI or doing it through APIs. And that actually brings us how to actually we're adding it from a practicality point. And the drop-in UI is literally what it sounds like. It's a pre-built UI. You just a couple of lines of code and you have the feeds, file sharing, and messaging within your app. And obviously you can style it. It's going to look like yours. It's not going to look like Weavy. And that is primarily what our users are doing today. You can also use our REST API and go straight to the engine and use all the functionality we have there, and then obviously render your own UI, whatever that built in. In our demo here, right, we're going to do Blazor. These endpoints we have, there's a couple already in the Weavy instance, right? They are customizable. So you can take the existing endpoints and do more or less. You can build completely new endpoints. And this is great because, like, you know, usually when you do these API calls, there is more than one thing happening, right? So you don't want to do, you know, several REST API calls because that's very consuming. In this case, you can actually do very advanced endpoints that does a lot at the same time. In that, you know, way you will increase performance and all that good stuff. Everything we're talking about here now today is you can find on the developer portal, both, like, you know, in general getting started with Weavy, but particularly this session we're talking about this demo, you can find on our developer portal on our website. Just go there. And now we're going to head into the actual demo, right? So we built like a simple demo app using Telerik UI library for Blazor. We built it, you know, to showcase Weavy's both ways of embedding the features. We both built, like, you know, for using our REST API, and then obviously we used the drop-in UI as well. So let's head into the demo and do some coding. Let's start looking at the app before we get into the actual code. So I'm going to switch over here to Visual Studio Code and start the actual app. It's going to build, and here we have it. So this first, right, when it comes to users, so these we just like hard-coded a couple of users for demo purposes. These users are in the Blazor app, like in this case, or in your case, it would be your app. So we're logging them into the Blazor app. And then what connects that user to Weavy and the users in the Weavy and directories, as I mentioned before, right, is JTT tokens are created for connecting those. So they are, you know, created on the fly. We're not going to dive into that specifically right now, but so you know that happens. Let's go in here now and click. I'm going to be Oliver for this. So we're authenticating Oliver. And voila, now we're in this beautiful web app, right? Welcome, Oliver, our latest poll. For whatever reason, we're talking about favorite sports. That's the dashboard. And then we have this little navigation here, right? We can see actually here's a badge with notifications. We have a chat. And as I said, like, we're going to talk about the API and the drop-in UI. And the chat we have here, the messaging piece, is the API approach. So here we actually built a chat based on some of the Telerik UI library components, the list view, some, you know, autocomplete and stuff like that. And then, for example, if we go into the files, that is using our drop-in UI, and I'm going to show you how that works as well. But here you get like kind of a glimpse of it. But let's dive into the back end, so to speak, right? So let's go back into Visual Studio Code. And here we have the project with all the different files. As I said, like in this case, like you have to point to Weavy. This is prepped for a demo called Showcase. For the API endpoint, right, to set that in the app settings, JSON, you can see here's the URL pointing to Showcase. If you want to change that to your own Weavy instance, if you have it on your local host or whatever, that's where you change it for the API endpoints. Later on, we're going to talk about the drop-in UI. And as I mentioned, right, the chat is a complete API approach. So here's the chat Razor file. And it has all like the normal stuff. There's Telerik splitter to create the kind of layout. And then we have the iteration of the conversations that are open. And then all the different, you know, modal windows and whatnot. And the interesting part here is, right, everything here is happening through a C# file we created here called chat service. So the chat service is actually where everything is getting routed through, right, to get the messages and get to post a message and get users and all that good stuff. So here you can see all the API points being used. Like, okay, here's for example, we are getting messages. This is in conversation with a specific ID that is returned, and so on and so forth. All right. So that is used like all through the chat service. You can play around in there. In the same service, we can also see that we are listening to things. Like we need to know when a message comes in so we can real time show that. We can see that here. Like we have, for example, here public void, the dispose. Real time on message, real time on typing. So we have the typing indicator. We're not really doing anything right now to show that in the UI. We're actually just throwing that into the console. but obviously the message we do. So if we want to go to that definition, we see here handle message, we are doing a console write, and then we load that conversation through that chat service I just showed you. And then we for a state has changed. And here you can see actually the handle typing, console write, we just do console writing. And if you want to do that, you can add something, dots or whatnot, showing that someone is actually writing. And as I said, this real-time component is also affecting the navigation, or is a part of navigation as well. So if I go to the nav menu file here, we can see that we have the chat and we have a badge, and we also have notification with a badge. And you can see that it has those handlers on here. So here we are connecting to real-time listeners here as well. So there's a badge, change through the chat service again, right? We're listening to a get badge change. So if there's like a new notification or a new conversation coming in, boom, it triggers. Okay, so we can actually show that as well. So if we go back to the chat, I can I can go in here to this one conversation. I'm going to pick up my phone because I have it on my phone as well. So I can go to this particular conversation and say hi there. And you can see now, boom, it actually happened here, hi there. And you can obviously reply to that as well, blah, 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 and send that away. So everything is happening in real time. And even the badges, right? So if I actually click, into notifications here, you can see now chat is empty. But I'll send another message here, just blah, blah, blah. And now, boom, you can see the notification badge highlighted there, okay? And now it's actually also bolded here, so you can see it's on red, and then I can go into that conversation. Very cool. But this is very simple, right? So it's only you can create a new conversation. You can see now here, these users here are in that, user directories I mentioned before. These are the users in a particular directory. So I can, send in a message to Samara, Adam, and Lily, for example, if I want to do a group conversation, create that conversation, and off we go. But this is very simple. There's no attached files or anything because it's just using the UI components towards the API. So that's pretty cool. The other thing is the drop-in UI. As I mentioned, and going back to, for example, files here. So here is two UI components we see. We see the post and we see the file sharing component. And then we use in Telerik just to have this splitter so you can see it's responsive. And here is, as I mentioned, the drop-in UI here is very simple, right? It just works out of the box. You don't have to think about real time or anything like that. So again, if I pick up my phone and go to this particular feed we see here, and I add a new comment, for example, or add a new post, hey there, and post that, you can see that automatically real-time comes up. Boom. Don't have to do anything more. And how this works, if we go into the actual files here, it's super straightforward because we created a component called Weavy for Blazor, right? And then another, component called Weavy app. So the Weavy is the head client SDK. And before I forget that, in the host, there is actually where when it comes to the drop-in UI, you refer to the client SDK, who makes all the drop-in UI, wonder work. So this is the URL. And again, if you're going to do, through localhost or something like that, that's what you have to change. But so this is the client SDK. Back to the files. So here we have created a Blazor component, right? A Weavy app. And then here you have the concept we talked about earlier, right? Space and apps and whatnot. So when you fire up a Weavy app, you have to define a space key, and that's a unique identifier. And then you throw in a app key, which is the name of the actual app, which can be anything. And then what type it is. So type is post is feeds, and type files is obviously files, right? So this is what's combining Telerik Blazor UI, and in that specific space now we're adding two apps, files posts and files. And these components, right, you find here under shared, you have the Weavy Razor, which is literally just firing up the Weavy client SDK, as you can see here. And then the Weavy app Razor is just a wrapper around the fact with the key, it attributes a key and stuff like that. And then you can see it automatically renders a div tag in this case. Like if you want to render something else, be more detailed, you can do that. But in this particular demo, it renders a div tag. So that's pretty cool. And as I said, like, you can do rich file previews anywhere, again, without adding any specific code. So let's just, take a PDF here from my desktop, drag it into a post, say, check this out, and post that. Now you can see here now, okay, whoa, here's a PDF. By clicking that, automatically an overlay is created, and you can preview the PDF without downloading it. And you don't have to do anything specific for that to happen. Same with the notes or the files here. This is the files app we were talking about, right? So here I can create notes, folders, Office documents. So let's say I want to create a Word document, new doc. And as you can see here, we're just creating like an empty Word document. I can click it, I can see it's empty. But here with the remote editing technology we have, I can fire up Word and then I can do my edits, remote into this without downloading, uploading. So here I go in and let's, do some edits. Doesn't have to be anything fancy schmancy. And then save. And then going back to the app, right? Clicking new doc, we can now see it's updated with what we just created. And you have versions and all that good stuff. And here's comments, so I can actually do @Ricard, need this from you. So we can actually collaborate around this particular file right now. And here we also have support for, Google Drive, and Dropbox and Box and Google OneDrive as well. You can create files in Google Drive. If you click here, you can actually attach files. So here I can attach a file from Google Drive, if that's what I want to do. And let's just pick a test, select. And now you can see this is added, but with a little bit of a different icon. And by clicking it here as well, you can actually see that we can preview the Google Docs in here as well. So since Google Docs allows that, we can do that. If I want to do edits, I just click here and I go to the Google Docs in Google Docs, so I can do all the editing. So that is the drop-in UI, right? How you just push those things in. The styling here, you can see, you can just CSS that as you want. And then continue to talk about the actual space concept, right? In terms of like you can be on very detailed level. So now here's the Files app, right? But on the profile, for example, we just added, for Oliver that is logged in now, Oliver's files. So he can have his own files. You can use the file sharing app for that. And you can also create like on a detail level. So here I just created a chart, right? So I can ask, let's talk about 2008. And by clicking 2008, we load a specific post app right now and say, Ricard, need to talk about 2008 and post that. And when I click back 2005, obviously, that is empty. Going back to 2008, we can now see, that is still here and we can continue the conversation. So what happens here is like literally what I've done here is like each click here, clicking 2005, creates a space in Weavy that is, uniquely attached to that particular chart point. And then in that space, I attach the post app. So if you think, further now, you can see, okay, I can attach, files apps and tasks apps into that space. And that all is then attached to 2005 in this case. So you can use like, that concept of space on a very detailed level, not just on a view level, like the whole thing, but in this case, it can actually be a data point, for example. And you can find this particular chart as well. You can see it here. It's just like, a dummy render of a chart. And then you have the Weavy app here. And this is automatically handled. Like, so you can see here that the key is, defined down here, the post key. And then on the click, when I click on something on the chart, you can see we update the post key with, an ID, post apps category ID. So post apps plus 2008 then. And as soon as that changes, the post key, this app is automatically reloaded, right? So when I click, we update the post key like here, and then the post apps is automatically reloaded with the new one from 2004. So very cool and very interesting. As I mentioned, everything you see here in our demo, you can find on our developer portal on GitHub. Just search for Weavy, and you can find this Telerik Blazor project, and just go and play around and have fun. Okay, thank you guys.